Hi guys, so I just wanted to do this response video to Jeff Taylor. Jeff is a Brexiteer and he believes Brexit is a good idea. Of course, I disagree with him on that. I have nothing personally against Jeff. I think he seems to be a reasonable person. But on this issue, he's leaving out some very important information. So let's get to the video and see what he's talking about.
Nissan has announced that it will be closing its operations in Barcelona, Spain, and consolidating in Sunderland, UK. This will of course upset the 2,800 or so Nissan workers in Barcelona, and it comes at the worst possible time, and they have been making their displeasure known with protests and tyre burning.
And he's correct. So I'm going to agree with Jeff a lot in this video, but he is leaving out some very important information, and I will come to it later in the video. But yes, he's correct. These people are losing their jobs. Nissan is closing its factory in Barcelona. It's maintaining, so it seems to be at the moment, it's maintaining its production in Sunderland in the UK. And the people in Barcelona are very angry. And you can understand, it's understandable why they're angry.
Must be a big blow for their local community. But Nissan exists to make cars and make a profit while it's doing so. And last year it suffered a £5 billion loss, and that, coupled with the likely outcome of the coronavirus pandemic, has probably forced their hand.
And he's correct once again. The car industry is suffering a great deal at the moment, and because of this current crisis, many people have decided to change their lifestyle regarding cars. Many people have changed their way of working. Many more people are staying at home and not going into town, and they have reconsidered the entire idea of having a car. Many people are worried about their current economic status and whether they can afford a car. So this is a very bad time, not just for Nissan, but for the car industry as a whole.
Nissan is part of a three-way alliance of themselves, plus Renault and Mitsubishi, and the BBC reports that they are all restructuring their global operations to enable them to work more closely and cut costs. As part of its plans, Nissan said it would focus on several key markets, including Japan, North America and China. Its boss said that it will sustain its presence in Europe, but will leave more room for alliance partners there, such as Renault. But there's more to it than just last year's falling sales figures and the invisible enemy. There is also the massive worldwide push, whether you think it good or bad, to replace fossil fuel use in cars with batteries. And the French government has been given the go-ahead by the EU Commission for a massive €5 billion coronavirus bailout of Renault. But in return for signing it off, the French government wants Renault to focus on the development of electric vehicles, treating contractors fairly, and to base its high-tech operations in France. I wonder if that last bit breaks single market regulations.
No, it doesn't break single market regulations because the European Commission have agreed to suspend certain regulations because of the coronavirus. So if the governing body decides to ease the restrictions, then you're not breaking the restrictions.
Anyway, it's not just Barcelona that will be losing a Nissan plant, as the company reduces its model offering from 69 down to fewer than 55. Its manufacturing facility in Indonesia is also to go, as it puts everything in the area into Thailand, and its statement says under the Action Plan, exiting South Korea, the Datsun business in Russia, and streamlining operations in some markets in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So, the UK must be offering some attractions to keep Nissan operating here, mustn't we?
Yes, but these are financial attractions. Now, whether this is a good idea or not, I don't know. Is it a good idea for the taxpayer to bail out Nissan in the UK? Now, if it's to maintain jobs and maintain an industry, we can argue the merits of that. But in some cases, politicians will bail out industries because they are worried about pissing off the voters. A lot of people work in that plant. If that plant closes, politicians are going to be punished. Now, I don't know whether the government are giving Nissan financial incentives to remain there, or Nissan themselves feel that there is a market for them in the UK.
And one of those might be that the UK will no longer be hamstrung by EU rules from the 1st of January next year.
This is irrelevant. It's nothing to do with rules that the EU are putting in place.
But to be sure enough to make such a decision publicly, one assumes that Nissan and our relevant government departments have been having a bit of a chinwag. I mean, wouldn't you want some assurances before committing billions in investment into the UK? Especially when the UK is now so aggressively green when compared to many other countries.
No, Boris Johnson has made promises, but Boris Johnson promised to build 40 hospitals not that long ago, and these hospitals were never built. So Boris Johnson can promise to be aggressive, saying, I'm going to eliminate diesel petrol vehicles by a certain date. This is our target. He can say this, but Boris Johnson has a bit of a problem with telling the truth.
Something that will drive all manufacturers in the UK down that narrow route very quickly. Remember that the government has already set a target of no new fossil-fuelled cars to be sold in the UK by 2035, with that possibly being advanced to 2032, and that's only 12 years away. So no one will be buying new fossil-fuelled cars from, about 2028 onwards, are they? As the depreciation would be a killer.
Jeff is right here. So if the target is a real target, if they phase out these fossil fuel vehicles, which I completely support, phasing out these vehicles, it's better for public health, reduced pollution, better for the environment, and better for people in people's health to have fewer diesel and petrol powered vehicles on the road. So I agree with Jeff here, and I think we're going in that direction. But it's not just the UK. Every country, pretty much every country in the world, is going in that direction. So it's not a UK unique strategy.
And petrol and diesel car development? Forget it. So apart from some cosmetic changes, I doubt a petrol or diesel car made in 5 years' time will be much different from one built today. And next will come stringent MOT rules that force old gas guzzlers off the road, hikes in fuel taxes to price them off the road, and the fast shutting down of petrol pumps to make them impossible to drive anyway.
I'd be interested to know if Jeff agrees with this. I have a feeling he probably agrees with this. He agrees with me on this. I think this is a good initiative. We should put public health before these gas guzzlers and these diesel cars. It makes sense. So I don't know. Jeff doesn't actually say whether he agrees or not with this, but I assume he does.
So committing to the UK would appear to be a long-term commitment for a car maker.
Now, what Jeff has left out in all of this video, unfortunately, is the idea of the trade deal. Now, what trade deal are you talking about? The trade deal between the EU and Japan. Japan and the EU have signed a huge trade deal. I'm going to show you some of the details in a moment. And part of this is that Nissan will produce cars in Asia. They will not produce cars in Europe. So that means that factories in Europe will close. Now, this is bad. I'm not sugarcoating this. This is bad for the people who work, for example, for Nissan in Barcelona. These people will lose their jobs. That factory will close. But why is the Sutherland one not closing? because the UK will not be part of that trade deal. The UK will be separate. So why is Nissan maintaining a factory? Well, they're either maintaining a factory because they believe there's a big enough market in the UK to sell their cars, or they're getting incentives from the government to maintain the factory. I don't know which one is the truth. Jeff doesn't know either. Nobody really knows. Well, some people know, maybe the government know, but the public don't know. And Nissan isn't coming forthgiving with this information. So it's important to remember that because of this trade deal, the UK will be blocked out. The UK will not be selling cars into the European market. Now, at the moment, up until Brexit, Nissan were producing hundreds of thousands of cars for the European market. That's gone. That's finished. Cars produced in Sutherland will be for the UK market alone, or for markets that the UK has signed trade deals with. Now, if they sign a trade deal with the European Union, it's possible that they would be able to sell cars into the EU market, but I don't know if they would be Nissan cars, because the EU would already have a trade deal with Japan, and Nissan would be selling cars that they produce in Japan into the European market. So this is the reason why the factory in Sutherland is remaining open. It's because of Brexit.
But I digress. At the end of the day, we were told that a post-Brexit UK economy would be a barren manufacturing wasteland as everyone left for the EU. But that was wrong.
It's not completely wrong. So the financial industry has been moving abroad and taking a lot of money with it. Manufacturing has been degraded, but it's not just because of Brexit. It's being degraded over many years because of outsourcing, because of China. So this is it's going to become a wasteland, but Brexit didn't exactly help the situation.
And given the current situation, had we still been a member of the EU, the decision could well have gone the other way.
And Jeff is actually right here. If the UK had been a member of the European Union, there's a possibility, a strong possibility even, that the Sutherland factory would have closed. And the UK workers in Sutherland for Nissan would have lost their jobs. So why am I saying this? Why is this not a bad thing? Of course, it's bad for the workers in Nissan. It's both in Sutherland if the UK had remained part of the EU, and definitely for the ones in Barcelona. So what's the payoff here? Of course, there has to be some sort of benefit for this. So it says here, this is from the BBC. Let me just explain. EU-Japan trade. 5 things about the EU, the world's biggest trade deals. This is the world's biggest trade deals. This is from the 1st of February 2019, last year. So it goes on to say, here are the 5 things about the trade deal. Services as well as Sonsier and Suzuki's. So the deal's headlines is about scrapping duties on 97% and 99% of Japanese and European imports respectively. So goods imported into Japan and imported into the European Union from Japan will have most, if not almost all, of the import duties eliminated. So this will make it much easier for example, on the European side, to sell products in Japan. So it says here, dairy and other food products are among the EU's biggest export to Japan. And the progressive reduction of nearly 1 billion euros on tariffs, nearly 40% on beef and up to 30% on chocolate, 15% on wine and up to 40% on cheese could boost exports and create jobs. So what's happening here is, yes, they're losing Nissan because Nissan is moving the production back to Japan, but you're creating more jobs because of this trade deal. So you're losing in one part, but you're gaining in another. And then, of course, you're making it much easier to enter Japan, because Japan, before this trade deal, had very high tariffs on imported goods. Going the other way, the EU will reduce 10% duty on car imports to 0 by 2027. So Nissan is definitely happy about this. They can import cars into the EU, and there will no longer be any 10% tariffs on that. Japan's government estimates it could increase GDP by 1%. So this is, the EU gains by selling more products to Japan, and then Japan also gain by selling more products into Europe and not having to pay these duties. However, the deal also provides better access for service firms, allowing them to bid for more public contracts. European service exports to Japan are currently worth 28 billion euro a year. The EU says firms selling business, finance, telecoms, transport and distribution services stand to benefit the most. And then Japan is emerging as a free trade champion. So Japan is becoming very aggressive in promoting free trade around the world. So you have to remember that in this free trade agreement between Japan and the EU, Japan gains something by having lower tariffs on their goods going into Europe, and Europe gain by having lower tariffs on their goods going into Japan. So the cost, you're losing jobs with Nissan because Nissan is moving out, but you're gaining jobs because you are allowing more trade to take place. So let me know in the comments, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks. Why not become a Patreon and enjoy access to our Discord server where we share news, chat, and have some fun. If you become a patron, you can also make video suggestions on topics that are important to you. Check it out via the link in the description.